Welcome back to AKC Style, the place for figure skaters who want to learn how to skate their hearts out, compete at their highest potential, and spend as much time practicing their inner work as they spend physically training on the ice. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Toe Picks Happen. My name is Ashley, and I'm so excited today to talk to you about goals. So I used to talk a lot about goal setting when I first started figure skating coaching, when I transitioned my business from personal styling to coaching. And I still do it, but I don't talk about it as much. And I feel like it's something that I'd like to revisit, especially because we're getting to the end of the year. We're almost at the end of 2024. This is like a good time for people to sit down and kind of reflect on what's happened so far in the year and kind of like what the rest of the year may bring for them. And then obviously what 2025 may look like for them. I think too, like when we are in November, a lot of times people feel like the year's over already and they just want to like get on with it. Like they're ready for the next year to start, or they feel like now's the time to start winding down. Now's the time to start relaxing and just kind of like reconcile with the fact that you haven't met your goals, or you did meet your goals maybe and you feel like that's good enough. But I actually have the opposite feeling when it comes to the end of the year, personally. When I think about the end of the year, I am probably the most busiest in November and December with skating. So we have like the winter exhibitions, we have competitions, people are getting ready to test, or they already just tested and they're coming up with new programs or adding more difficult moves to their programs. I have a lot of lessons. I'm always busy going to different rinks. And this is like the part of my year that ramps up because we're in skating season now. Like we're deep in almost winter time and a lot of things are going on. So I feel like at the end of the year, it's like, okay, whatever goals I didn't meet, or I felt like I'm almost there, I need to push harder and reach them before December 31st. And December 31st doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just a day. And then the next day is the next year. So if you don't meet a goal by December 31st, like who cares? It doesn't really matter that much. It's just in my own head and it's just kind of personal. But for me, I like to start the new year off on like clean slate. I don't want to bring old stuff with me from 2024 into 2025. And I've always been like that year to year. So I feel like now is a good time here in episode 5 to talk about goal setting, to talk a little bit about some upcoming exciting things that I'm going to be sharing with you over the next couple weeks that'll launch in 2025. I also am really excited to talk about how you can set yourself up to reach your goals, and I'm going to walk you through how I break down my goals when I sit and reflect for myself. And then also we're going to just talk about a little bit about like how you set yourself up for success. And this isn't just necessarily in skating. It could be in your personal life. It could be in your work life. It could be in your relationships, whatever it may be. It could be in school for sure. But we're going to talk about like what success means versus failure. So I'm excited to jump in and talk about everything that I have planned for you today. But before we do that, I just have a quick few things that I'm excited to share with you. So if you've been following me on Instagram at AKC Style, or you've seen any of my recent posts on YouTube with the same handle, then you probably have seen some few offers that I have coming up, some different skating programs, because I am deciding to kind of expand my coaching a little bit and challenge myself. That was one of the things that I gave myself as a goal for 2024. I wanted to see I wanted to see kind of like where I could take my coaching, and if I could be as creative as I wanted to and had no boundaries, like not no boundaries, but boundaries within reason, or no boundaries within reason, where I could take my coaching. So I decided to take some of the things that I learned from doing my personal styling business before and bring them into coaching. So if you've been following me for a while, or you take private lessons from me, you probably have noticed that I do some things a little differently when it comes to my communication with you guys, and a little bit of how I teach, and then some of the things that I do for you throughout the year. those are all things that I learned from my years of customer service and retail, and then also, of course, in my styling business. And those are the things that worked for me. I really enjoy doing all that I can to help my skaters, just like I did with my clients when I was styling. So some of those things I do differently. So I kind of challenged myself with that this year to see if I could integrate anything that I have done in the past with my coaching. So I feel like I'm pretty good at that now, but you can tell me. I don't know. Let me know in the comments or DM me or something, and let me know if you think I'm doing a bad job. So one of the things I decided to do recently in the last couple months was kind of launch some different offers for you guys, some different coaching programs in a way that's different than what I think other figure skating coaches may be doing now or have done before. I've never really seen some of the things I'm doing now offer it in the way that I'm doing it, but we'll see how it goes. So far, so good, right? So I have a lot of resources that I'm offering you guys on my website. You can either go to akcstyle.com and just scroll through. It's right on the homepage. I have some free resources for you. One of them is the Ultimate Competition Checklist. The other one is how to master a sit spin. And I have more resources on mastering different types of skills coming soon. So make sure that you get on that list for sure. And then you'll get every resource thereafter that I'll send out about how to master different types of skills. So it won't just be spins. For now, it's just about sit spins, but it'll be about spins, it'll be about jumps, it'll be about footwork and edges and just different things that I know are very important for every skater to master and learn. So make sure that you get on that list. That is the newest resource that I have available for you. And again, it's called How to Master Your Sit Spin. So you can go to my website and drop in your email. You get it right to your inbox. So I have that one. I have the Ultimate Competition Checklist. And then I also have the Set Yourself Up for Success guide. And that is a free guide where I have a bunch of warm-ups in there for you. I'm always updating it. And I also have a lot of coaching advice in there. So I know that some of the things that I talk about here on the podcast and that I talk about in my social media and that I talk about with you guys when I'm on ice with you are things that just kind of come naturally to me, just like about posture and certain knee bend and different leg positions and arm positions that kind of come natural. So when I started coaching, I realized that some of those things just don't come naturally to all skaters. Some people do it just innately, and especially if they take dance, but not everybody does. So I have a bunch of those kind of little coaching tidbits in the Set Yourself Up for Success guide. So you can also go to my website and get that free resource as well. And then once you're signed up on that list, anytime I update it with new warm-ups and new drills and new advice, then you'll get that to your inbox as well. And then if you're listening or watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see the links in my description box down below too. So you can go ahead and check out any of these free resources, and I have tons more coming, so I hope that you'll go ahead and grab those. One of the reasons why I decided to create the Set Yourself Up for Success this season guide is because I felt like there's a lot of skaters who feel like success equals winning and losing equals failure, or failure equals losing. But there's so many nuances between success and failure. And I don't really think that there's such thing as failing when you're a skater, except if you just give up on yourself. Like that's the only thing I think of personally when I think of failure. If you never allow yourself to push yourself, to challenge yourself, if you come up to an obstacle and you decide that you'd rather walk away instead of trying to work through it and find a way to become successful through that obstacle, that's the only thing that I would think would equal failure in my eyes. But there's so many different versions of what success looks like, and it looks different for every skater. It looks different for every person just in life as well. And I think, that's what came up for me when I thought of like setting yourself up. So if you were a beginner skater and you decided, okay, I want to skate today, and maybe it's, I won't be very good, or I don't have very good balance off the ice. So when I get on the ice, it's not going to be great, and I'm going to be really careful. I'm super cautious. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to fall. And I don't want anybody to laugh at me or embarrass myself, So I think like in that situation, the failure would be to never try. So if you feel like whenever there's public skating available at your local rink and you don't go, not because your schedule's too busy or because you're not feeling up to it or you're tired or physically maybe you're achy or whatever, it's because you decide like you don't want to embarrass yourself, or you might slip, you might fall, it may not look good, you won't look perfect, you'll feel ridiculous being an adult out there on the ice. And even if you are good and you're having fun, like, oh, are you supposed to have fun because you're an adult and you're not a kid that's racing around the rink? I think that not going equals failure in that instance. Instead of saying to yourself, like, maybe I could go to public skating, maybe I'll have better balance than I thought I would, maybe I'll get on the ice and I'll feel comfortable because the last time I skated, I was a teenager or I was a little kid. And all of a sudden now you're, not just marching or taking small steps against the wall, but you're off the wall and you're kind of stroking a little bit and gliding around easily, and you surprise yourself. That's success. You don't have to go out there and be the best. You don't have to do everything perfectly. You don't have to feel 100% comfortable. Just going out there equals success. So like another example would be a skater who, let's say, is, I don't know, we'll use the example like a skater who's just kind of working on their backwards and forwards crossovers, their stroking and their posture. They started to kind of master those beginner moves where they look really good doing them, but they don't necessarily have the cool turns, like 3 turns, and they don't really have their edges yet, forward or backwards, or they've never tried them. So if you're in that bucket, success for you will look different than the beginner skater, right? Because you're comfortable on the ice and you know how to move easily across the ice. So instead, success for you may look like going out there and trying your forward outside edges. So, you're going to either use the circle as your guide, maybe do a couple strokes around the circle, and then just lift your outside foot and have your inside foot on the ice. So it's tracing the circle pretty much. And then you're just trying to get a feel and get comfortable gliding on one foot, kind of using your outside edge. And you're going to try that both directions. Then you're going to do the same thing again, forward, but you're going to lift your inside foot so you can feel your inside edges on both sides. And then once you get comfortable with that, success, even more success, looks like trying it off the circle and doing it on the red line or the blue line. So that to me is like, that's a win, and that is success. It doesn't have to be perfect. Your arms might be wrong. Your posture may not be perfect, but you tried it and you put yourself out of your comfort zone so that you could try something new. And that is success. Another example for you is a skater who, let's say, is, a little bit more advanced and they're doing jumps and spins. They've mastered their basic skating skills. So they have their edges, they have their turns and the 3 turns, like forward and backward, inside and outside. They have their edges, forward, backward, inside, outside. They've mastered crossovers and they started doing cross rolls, forward and backwards, maybe even starting to do brackets or more difficult turns. And, for them, success would mean a program, let's say. Success would mean skating to music, possibly getting ready for competition, possibly even if they're not ready to compete or they don't want to compete, it could be just putting the skills in a sequence together, even if there's no music, and learning how to string the moves together in a way that is comfortable for the skater and pleasing to the audience. So that's like a challenge that you can give yourself at practice. And you don't need a coach to do that. You don't need to be in a class to do that. And I think that can help you improve your skills so much. It's really easy to do a 3-turn from standing still, right? Well, once you have a 3-turn, it's easy to just stand still and then push forward to your 3-turn. It is a lot more difficult to try the 3-turn with moves in front of it and then moves on the other side of it as well. So you're not going into the 3-turn from standing still. You're going into it with movement. That's a challenge in itself. And you can do that starting just from, forward stroking. Maybe you give yourself a 2-foot glide and see if you can push into a 3 turn. And then on your checkout, you go into backwards crossovers. Like, that's not necessarily difficult for the skater who's more advanced working on jumps and spins, but seeing how good you can get with connecting your moves together and moving across the ice very easily and very effortlessly is a very refined skill, and it takes time to make it look really good, right? So even if it's not part of your program, that is something that you can do that will help you get better in your skills. Now that you have a few examples of goals, let's talk about what happens next, because it's good to have goals in your head of what you might want to try or what you're looking forward to achieving, but how do you actually make it happen? And I think that that's what some people end up missing out on. So it's really easy to sit and journal or meditate or dream about what you want to do or what you want to look like. And it's a whole nother thing to make it happen, right? That's the more difficult part, and that's the place where I think a lot of people end up stopping. So like if we think about when people set New Year's resolutions, a lot of times by mid-January, their resolution is out the window and they've completely abandoned it. And it's not because they're not good people or because they're not good at setting goals and achieving goals or that they can't do it or that it was too hard. Sometimes it means it's maybe a little bit far-reaching, but it's really just because they didn't think about the steps that they need to take to get to those goals and achieving them. So that's where I feel like I come in, and I'm really good at kind of bridging the gap between what you want to do in your skating and then where you are now and like all the steps that it takes to get there. So just as an example, so I have time with my skaters that I work with privately, and at the beginning of their lesson, I'll usually ask them, we do this at the beginning of the season, but I check in with them periodically. So let's just bring it back to the beginning of the season. I'll ask them, what are some things that you want to achieve this season? And that seems like a huge goal, right? That seems like a huge conversation. It's a lot to think about, but most of them know what they want. And just asking them that way, that bluntly, like not giving them any heads up that I'm going to ask them this or when I'm going to ask them or what I'm looking for them to say, they don't know. I just put it out there and leave it open-ended. And usually the first thing that comes up for them is the most, it's like a very, very far goal in their mind, but they think if they just put it out there that, it'll be fine. One goal's enough. And like, yep, that's what I want to do. So let's say like it's a skater who is at Freestyle 2 and they're like, this season I want to reach Freestyle 4. And I say, okay, we could do that. Let's think about what's at Freestyle 4. Let's look at all the moves that are listed in Freestyle 4 that you'll need to pass in order to take that test and pass. Now let's look at Freestyle 3 and see what are all the moves in Freestyle 3 that you need to execute and pass. And then now let's look and see where you're at currently at Freestyle 2. So these are all the moves that you've mastered prior that can help you master the moves in Freestyle 3 and then Freestyle 4. So with a goal like passing Freestyle 4 and you're at Freestyle 2 now, I don't necessarily think that it's helpful to put a time limit on it. I think that you should allow yourself all the grace in the world to maybe not even pass Freestyle 3 before the end of 2024. Maybe we say, we want to pass Freestyle 3, we're working towards 3. If 3 comes a lot faster than we're expecting, that's awesome. We're going to be comfortable in 3. If this skater wants to compete, we're going to competition. We're coming up with multiple programs. We're going to try as many categories as we can and as many events as we can and as many competitions as we can that financially we're able to do, and then also time-wise we're able to commit to as well. Then once we're comfortable at Freestyle 3, we feel like we've really mastered these moves and, we've been working on in the background moves for Freestyle 4, but it hasn't been like a focus for us because we want clean programs, we want strong skating skills, we want to be able to set goals at every competition, not just to like, oh, I want gold, I want first place, but to skate really cleanly in competition, the same that you do in practice. That's the goal. right? I don't really care what medal you get. I don't care what rank you get, but I want you to be able to go out there and be really proud of yourself for skating in the way that you wanted to skate at each competition. Then, after we get to that place, no matter where it is in the year or in the season, we can talk about testing for Freestyle 4, right? And we can see then where we're at. So we're never just working on whatever level that we're at. We are always working on skills that can push us and challenge us from at least one level above where we're currently at. I think that that's only helpful for skaters to be able to work towards those goals. Sometimes it's 2 levels ahead. But we don't want to exclusively worry about Freestyle 4 when we're still on 2 and we have to pass Freestyle 3 first, right? And get really comfortable with those moves. I think that that's really important. And the way that, if any of you are listening to this and you're not familiar with ISI, that's the program that I coach through is ISI. And the way that the levels are stacked, or that each skill, or all the skills in each level, each freestyle level, they build on top of each other. So like a good example is like in Freestyle 3, you have your salchow, you have your toe loop, you have your back pivot, and all of those moves, even though they're all different, they all have very similar entries. So you need to understand how your body is positioned. You need good balance. You need to have a great checkout. You need to be able to have a lot of speed and flow, and you need to have a lot of body awareness to be able to do those moves and execute them, not just technically correctly, but so that they look really appealing to people, you know, and to your judges, people who are going to be testing you or judging you at competition. Then when you go to Freestyle 4 and you have things like a flip or sit spin, those moves are really difficult to master without having the skills that are necessary for you to pass Freestyle 3 with. You need to be able to check your shoulders. You need to be able to hold your landing positions really well. And they build off of all these skills that you learned earlier from pre-alpha through Freestyle 2 as well. So I think that that's kind of like something that I would tell a skater about who wants a goal of passing Freestyle 4 and they're currently at Freestyle 2. That's just like a conversation that I've had with a couple of the skaters that I coach privately. So that's like one thing. And now I've went off on a tangent, so honestly, I don't even remember why I started with this conversation, but it's still relevant because I think that knowing where, that's exactly what it was, knowing where you want to go, and then seeing where you're currently at, and then knowing all the steps in between. That's so important when you think about goal setting. And then part of knowing where you want to go and all the steps in between, it's more than just knowing the elements. What do you have to do physically with your body to achieve the skills that you'll need to achieve in Freestyle 4 and higher? Maybe you have to look at your eating habits and make sure that you're fueling your body. Maybe you have to make sure that you are doing some off-ice stretching and maybe even conditioning so that you'll have the stamina to be able to finish that 2 minute or 2.5 minute program. Maybe you'll have to look at building muscle so that you can have enough height to get your rotation on your jumps and to get really fast spins to hit all your revolutions that you need to hit. Like, those are things that you should think about as well. Now, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a personal trainer. I'm a figure skating coach who also figure skates as an adult and has been a skater their whole life. So although I'm not like certified as a nutritionist or anything like that, I do know what I personally feel like when I fuel my body. When I wake up in the morning and I eat breakfast, even if it's a piece of fruit. Like, I like to eat a banana and like an English muffin with peanut butter or something sometimes for breakfast. Or I'll have some eggs and toast or whatever. So when I eat in the morning for breakfast, and then I also have a snack or two throughout the day, or have like a solid lunch with me in the middle of the day, and then have maybe a snack on the way to the rink in the afternoon, I know how I feel when I'm on the ice as a coach. I feel much better. I don't feel distracted. I don't feel tired. I don't feel weak. I don't feel draggy. I don't feel like it's hard to breathe, or I just feel like heavy in the way that I carry myself. I feel exactly the opposite of all those things when it's time for me to go on the ice around like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or even 3:30 or whatever. I feel better. Versus when I don't eat breakfast because my morning's super busy or I'm running around, I have errands to run, and the next thing you know, it's 11:30, it's 12 o'clock. I haven't really eaten anything or haven't eaten anything all day. Then I grab something really quick, and then my stomach's growling when it comes time for me to go to the rink in the afternoon. Then I don't have the best lesson in the afternoon because I feel tired and I feel really fatigued. My body isn't liking me because I didn't fuel it before I went to the rink. And I noticed that as a coach, so I can only imagine how it feels as a skater. And when I was younger, it wasn't as big of a deal to me until I started to pay attention to actually documenting how I was feeling based off of my sleeping habits, making sure I was drinking enough water, and then making sure I was eating the right things at the right times. So it's just something that I always kind of like to throw out there. Everybody has their own personal feelings about their nutrition and how they feel about themselves physically. But I do think that it's important to also just take note of how you're feeling based off of your daily habits. And that does make a difference. And let me just tell you, especially as an adult, when you get enough sleep, and enough sleep for some people is 6 hours, maybe it's 7. For some people, it's 9. For me personally, it's around like 7.5 hours. If I get like a little more than that, I feel more tired than I think it's helpful. But your version of getting enough sleep is amazing. It is a game changer. It will change your life. And if you make sure that you wake up at the same time every day or around the same time every day, you go to sleep around the same time every day or exactly at the same time every night, you'll notice a difference in how you're feeling and how you end up fueling your body and how you end up interacting with everybody at school or at work. And it makes a huge difference. So I definitely would recommend looking into your feelings around your health and your well-being and your sleep for sure when it comes to setting your goals and reaching them. So the next part here of goal setting is how you actually do it. So anybody can go on to YouTube. If you're listening to this on YouTube, I'm sure you probably have already done this, or you may already have this on your Discover page, but you can look up and see like, what's the best way to set goals, or like, how do I set goals, or whatever. And there's a million different ways that people will tell you is the right way or how you should do it. But I'm going to tell you how I do it, and then you can compare it for yourself. I don't think that there's necessarily a right or wrong way, and everybody has a different kind of way that they approach it. For me, I always start with reflection, and I do that in different ways. I really love writing, so I journal. I love pen to paper more than I love to type on my phone in my notes app or on my laptop. So I like pen to paper, and I sit down and I just start thinking of like, what's going really well for me right now? What's not going well for me at all? What are things I want to change? And how could I make them change? Or what if something is going well for me, how could I make it better? Or like, what else can I do to equal that level of goodness, let's say. And I like to write that down. Pen to paper is really important for me when I think of reflection. And then sometimes if I either don't feel like writing, or it's just something small that kind of comes up for me, or I've had a rough day, I will just lay on my bed and maybe put some music on, or just lay there in a little bit of silence for a few minutes and just kind of like let myself breathe. And then after a couple minutes, I'm able to start writing down some of the things that I'm feeling, and I feel way less frustrated. I don't suggest setting goals for yourself when you're frustrated. And I always think of something that I've heard many people say. Mentors of mine would say this, my parents say this. If you wouldn't make this move when you're happy, whatever the move may look like, then you're probably only making that decision because you're upset. So, you don't make decisions when you're feeling upset or when you're feeling angry or frustrated with yourself. I don't think that that's a good place to set goals from or make moves from at all. You should always do it when you're in a state of calm or happiness, really, because then you're most clear. So the next thing I think about too is like kind of categorizing my goals. So I think of my goals in terms of like, what do I want personally? what I want to do in my business, what I want to do in my skating life. So that's with coaching, and then for me personally with my skating. If you've been following me here on YouTube, you've seen my Come Skate With Me video. My latest video is about me landing my axle and kind of like the steps that it took me to get there. And it took me a while, but I eventually got there. So when I say like goals for my skating, that's one of the things that I mean when I say that. And then the other thing I do with my categories is think about like, what does my life look like in like 2 to 3 month time periods? So it's not exactly 2 months or exactly 3 months. Like I don't necessarily think of my life in quarters, like January to March and then April to June or whatever. But I think sometimes it is helpful just to put it on paper with like 4 quadrants and think like, if my skating season, let's say, starts around September, then I'm going to have one quadrant that will say September, October, November. I'm going to have another one that may say December, January, February. Maybe I'll even throw in March there. And then, or maybe I'll split those 2 up. But whatever that looks like for you personally. And you have to think about your year. It's not necessarily about my year or some other person's year that you're looking up on how to goal set or like something that you saw on Pinterest. It has to be reflective of your life, right? And what that looks like for you. Maybe you want to just take the end of June to August with no skating. So you're not going to have goals for your skating for the end of June into August because you don't plan to be on the ice. Maybe you go to camp, or maybe you just want to take time off and you're going to be with your family, and you're going to go on vacations or whatever you're going to do. Maybe your rink near you is closed, so you can't skate. That's like something that you have to think about, and that's all personal to you. So I categorize my goals. I set them in time periods. So for me, that's 2 to 3 month time periods. I give myself time to reflect, time to journal, time to really think about what's going well for me and what could be better, what I'm hating right now or I'm in a hard spot with, and I want to transform that. And then the last thing I think that is important, actually there's 2 things that are important. So the second to last thing is thinking about gratitude. So I feel like that's a word that everybody kind of throws out there and like, you should be grateful, you should have gratitude, especially this time of year. And yeah, we all know that, but it's really hard to find gratitude in times where like times are tough. It's hard to say like, oh, I'm so grateful that I'm going through this difficult time right now because I know when I get through it on the other side is going to be so wonderful. When you're in a hard time, you're not thinking about gratitude or like being grateful. You're just like, I hope I get through this. I'm just trying to I'm just trying everything I can to make it through this hard time. But you do have to find a way to kind of pull out little moments of gratitude, even if it's gratitude of having like a second to put pen to paper and like write down some things that are going well for you. You can be grateful that you have that time. It doesn't have to be this big, elaborate, like focus on gratitude that I feel like sometimes people, especially in the personal development world, will say like you need to be grateful for every little moment and be super positive about everything that's coming your way and all this stuff. Like that's really hard to do when you're really going through it. So just give yourself grace on that. But it is important to find ways to get that in there when you're thinking about setting your goals and where you want to be in whatever time period that you're planning. And then the very last thing is to allow yourself to make adjustments as needed. I think that sometimes when people set goals, they get very strict on themselves. And then just going back to what we were talking about in the beginning of this episode, where we talked about people who will make New Year's resolutions and then mid-January they're falling apart and they're nowhere near achieving those goals or being on track to achieve them. It's because we're so strict on ourselves. Like, I think we need to be able to have some leeway in what our goals look like and why. You know, if you make a goal in September, it may have to change by the time December comes around, and definitely by January, because so much time has gone by. Life is different now. Your challenges are different in December or January than they were in September. Life is different. So many things change. So you have to be able to make adjustments and account for that time, which is also why I think sometimes putting too strict of a deadline on when you want to hit a certain goal, it just puts more pressure and stress on you. And then the road to achieving that goal seems nearly impossible, and you don't even enjoy it. If you do reach the goal, it just feels like relief, not like you're grateful that you did it and now you can't wait to see what's next. It's like, thank God that's over. Like, that's not fun at all. And when you set goals, it should be to help expand you, not to put pressure on yourself. So I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have for you today, is just to make sure that you allow yourself enough grace to make adjustments with your goals, whatever those goals may be. Don't give yourself such harsh deadlines to achieve whatever goals that you have to achieve or you want to achieve. And I think you need to be able to kind of see far enough ahead where it's exciting for you to think about achieving the goals, not where it feels like pressure or feels impossible. So I hope that this helped. As you think about some goals that you may want to set for yourself in the coming year and at the end of this year, remember that just because it's November of 2024, it doesn't mean that the year is over. You still have more than a month left of this year. And if you haven't achieved a goal that you set for yourself in January of 2024, it's not too late to still go for it now. So I hope that this inspires you. I hope that you have fun as you think about some goal setting that you may want to start working on now before the end of the year and into next year. And I want to thank you guys for listening, and I hope that I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening today. If you found this episode helpful, let me know in the comments, and be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. This helps other figure skaters discover my channel and also helps me decide what topics I should share with you next. Have fun out there, and I'll see you at the rink.